So Alex Jones, we have quite a fascinating story here about him. He's obviously been in court over his Sandy Hook comments. There was a big lawsuit around this. Now, he was found what's called guilty by default in those cases, which just means it wasn't necessarily on the merits of the case. It's the fact that he was legally obligated to provide documents to the court, and he didn't provide those documents. So it's a very rare thing that happened, but it happened. They found him guilty by default. There's, I guess, civil lawsuits as well around what Alex Jones is doing. Now, he offered, I think, about $110,000 or $120,000 per family trying to settle. They rejected that. He skipped a deposition. Now, since then, he has gone to the deposition, but he was doing financial maneuvers behind the scenes to protect himself monetarily. And so he had these like shell companies, and I think he took $18 million that was part of his InfoWars companies and put them into these new shell companies. We reported on that recently. Well, now we have another update. So take a look at this. This is in Raw Story. Alex Jones considering Chapter 11 bankruptcy to stall lawsuits report. This is actually originally from Bloomberg. Let me give you more of what they say here. Jones has been begging fans for help after he was found liable in a defamation lawsuit brought by relatives of Sandy Hook children killed in 2012 that he called a hoax. The InfoWars founder has yet to learn what monetary damages he will have to pay, and the new report claims he is meeting with advisors about filing for Chapter 11 protection. According to Bloomberg, a Chapter 11 filing would aim to allow Jones's businesses, such as InfoWars and Free Speech Systems, to keep operating while pausing civil litigation against them, said the person who has not to be identified because the discussions are private. Adding, lawyers representing Jones and his businesses have said the defamation lawsuit was strategically filed, to silence their free speech on matters of public interest, according to court filings. Just over a week ago, Jones was accused by the Sandy Hook families of hiding a jaw-dropping amount of cash, with the Daily Beast reporting Jones allegedly transferred $18 million out of his company, starting when the family sued him in 2018, and transferred the funds to a company called PQR, which they claim is controlled by Jones or his family members. Okay. So this was the article last night, which I prepped for the show this morning. Since then, it actually happened. So Axios is reporting, InfoWars files for bankruptcy after Sandy Hook defamation lawsuits. So he actually did it. He pulled the trigger. So let me read you what it says here. Alex Jones InfoWars on Sunday filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in the Southern District of Texas with an estimated liability of as much as $10 million. Two other companies owned by Jones filed for bankruptcy as well, each with an estimated liability of up to $10 million. Jones was found liable for damages in a defamation lawsuit arising from his claims that the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting was a giant hoax. The companies that filed were InfoWars, InfoWars Health, and Prison Planet TV. Jones had said that the Sandy Hook massacre was a false flag operation planned by crisis actors. As a result, several families sued him for his unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. A trial to determine how much Jones should pay in damages to the families that sued him over his hoax claims has yet to take place, per Bloomberg. Okay, so the noteworthy thing here is, so he actually pulled the trigger and filed for bankruptcy. He did it for InfoWars, InfoWars Health, and Prison Planet TV. So those are some of his companies. Now, InfoWars Health, the idea that InfoWars Health, his InfoWars store, which he sells a lot of these questionable supplements and, he sells merch. The idea that, that business is struggling, that he's really going belly up on that front, is absolutely preposterous. Because even with all the social media bans, he's still operating. I think last I checked, he's on this outlet called ban.tv. And his own store swims in money. So hold on, I actually have the reporting here for you guys. This is from January 7th, 2022. So this is recent. Rolling Stone says Alex Jones raked in $165 million over 3 years selling supplements and prepper gear. Wow. That's a lot of money. So I think they have, I'm looking for it now. Okay. So to be fair, the years where this happened, it's over 3 years beginning in September 2015. That's where they got the records from. So 15, 16, 17, 18. So like from 2015 to 2018, roughly. That's the amount of money he made in there. So it is possible that, because I think the bans happened after that. So it is possible that since then, all, the money's dried up. But I highly doubt he actually has a cash flow problem. His outlet, even with all the social media bans and whatnot, is phenomenally successful. he is a colossally wealthy man. I mean, look, again, Alex Jones raked in $165 million over 3 years. $165 million, and that's just his merchandise, his supplements, and his prepper gear, and his shirts, and his mugs, and all that shit. So make no mistake about it. This is Alex Jones consulting with his lawyers saying, hey, man, there are some tricks we can use to protect your assets and, shield you from really having to pay too much, or at least shield you from really having to lose everything as a result of these cases. And that's what he's doing. So I'm very curious to see, and I asked you guys this in the last video, what do you think he's actually going to be ordered to pay? What do you think he's actually going to be ordered to pay to the Sandy Hook families who sued and won? Because if they rejected $110,000 or $120,000 each, are they looking for what, $5 million each, something to that effect? And how much will these moves with shell companies and filing for bankruptcy and moving the money around, how much is that going to actually protect Alex Jones? Where is he largely going to get out of this unscathed? I mean, you might have to pay something, but I don't think it's going to really take him down in any serious sense. So anyway, that's what's going on with Alex Jones right now. Just filed for bankruptcy. He's been moving money around into shell companies. I do think he'll find a way to largely protect himself from any sort of worst case scenario. And, he's not going to serve any jail time or whatever over the comments. And that case I actually find really interesting for a number of reasons. And I've laid this out for you guys before, but I'll run through it one more time for those of you who perhaps haven't seen those segments. The case actually, in my opinion, how he was found guilty by default, it went kind of the best way it could have gone. Because if he was found guilty on the merits, I think that was a leap, and it does set a bad free speech precedent. Because Alex Jones himself, he was spreading these horrific conspiracy theories and saying Sandy Hook was a hoax and saying they were crisis actors and doing all these things. And those things were factually wrong. Like, he was dead wrong. But what really happened is there were a number of psychos in his own audience who they have agency, and they then took it the next step where when Alex Jones says all this stuff, they go look up, what are their addresses, and then they go harass them and do all these negative things. So you can make a case for like incitement, but I think incitement by the legal definition needs to be like Alex Jones actually telling them to go do some sort of violence or whatever. And he didn't do that. And from my reading of the facts of the case, he didn't give out addresses or say, take action in your own hands or anything like that. So really, it's just a loathsome guy talking about horrendous conspiracies. And then the people who actually committed the crimes were the, borderline psychopaths in the audience. And so those people really, first and foremost, are guilty and need to be locked up because they actually committed crimes, targeted harassment, some attempted violence. These families had to move a bunch of times. I have nothing but sympathy for the families. So then that puts Alex Jones in a situation where, like, if he's found guilty on the merits of the case, that does set a bad free speech precedent, because then anybody who advocates some sort of conspiracy and then somebody else takes that next step and does something bad as a result of those conspiracies, you could go after that person. That's like, should Bill O'Reilly have gone to prison or had to pay millions of dollars because he always said, Tiller the baby killer, and then some psycho in his audience went and killed George Tiller? I would argue, no, he's being reckless, he's being irresponsible, he should feel something on his conscience, but you can't legally go after him for that, because the person who should really go down is the person who killed George Tiller, right? So it's a weird situation with Alex Jones where, like, he's in the real world, the effects of his actions are so deleterious and negative that he should feel guilty about it deeply and should never do anything like that ever again. But in terms of legal consequences, it's just a little too much of a stretch to go after him. So what ended up happening again was he was found guilty by default, which just means he didn't give the proper paperwork to the court, which he had to do. And so he was found guilty as a result of that. I really think it's the best case scenario, because this way he's guilty, but it's also not setting a bad precedent. And so it sort of worked out for everybody. But now, again, I don't know, with these latest moves from him, filing for bankruptcy and moving money around to shell companies, I don't know just how much he's going to be able to shield himself and if he'll largely escape any sort of accountability. That's yet to be seen. We'll find out very shortly. And as soon as we do, I'll bring you guys the information, because clearly I'm very interested and borderline obsessed with this case. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take $0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.